Welcome in or welcome back. Thank you for being here. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about treatment number 30 that I did of Spravato this past Thursday. And I also have a short progress report I'll do first. And then I will tell you about the most blasted I've ever felt, for lack of a more clinical term, on Spravato. But I have to keep reminding myself, for starters, how much more resilient I am than when I first started. So when I go back and watch all of these one day, I'll be able to see how I felt where I was during this time. And I also kind of want to see how the sound of my voice has gotten. Not the actual that it sounds differently, but the way there's like feeling okay or feeling real bad in my voice. I haven't really thought about that before, so that'll be an interesting thing to look back on when I watch all of these. But yeah, I mean, okay, being an up and down so often and thinking about the struggles about what I'm dealing with week to week on like a distress tolerance level for these videos makes me frustrated because everything's so slow and subtle, but I'll still take it over not. But that's my biggest complaint about the whole thing. I mean, that's a bigger complaint than having to spend effing $70 a week on Ubers to be able to get there and back. But that being said, it was a hard week and I felt defeated a lot of the time, but I managed to make it through the days without collapsing, other than last Sunday when all sorts of big bad blows came at me. But in general, it's nighttime that's the hardest, whether or not there's a big bad blow that day. But that's my quick check in for you today, and I wanted to tell you the story of the last actual treatment now. So it was kind of an explosion, I suppose you could say. Because, well, definitely the third dose given to me was late. So I'm assuming that since that correlates with how blown away I was, that had something to do with it. And when I left that day too, I still felt like drunk. And I probably should have sat there at the hospital some more, but I was getting into an Uber and I wasn't like not able to take care of myself. But I was like, oh man, like it lasted longer than it should have for the observation period. And like, I get why it's not great, but a reminder if you're, or a reminder, or if you're new, some actual administration of treatment of Spravato. You go to your hospital room. When you get called back, you blow your nose, get an applicator. It's got 2 sprays in it, one for each nostril. You do that. You repeat 5 minutes later, and then you repeat 5 minutes later after that, and it's 84 milligrams of esketamine and some other stuff. I should look at it. What else is in there? Anyway, after the like the timing is supposed to be super important. Okay, trying to keep it all together and tell this story. And here we go. And Dan, who's in charge of my treatments, is always super anal about it. So this is like a cornerstone like piece that I'm thinking about as all of this is happening. You'll kind of see what I mean. But like, speaking of Dan, he was out this past Thursday and he's been out other times before, and other people in the department will give me my meds and all that. And 2 women were there on Thursday that set me up initially. One of them is this transfer from the emergency room department. She has horrible bedside manner, and I don't particularly care for just like our exchanges. I don't think she has the personality for a behavioral health ward or whatever you want to call it, unit. But there was this other woman who did the actual medication administration for me that was there too, who I had never met before. And for all I knew, she could be good, new to the whole process, because emergency woman is new, right? So who knows? Whatever the deal was, my first dose was fine, and you're feeling some kind of relief at that point. Like a minute after, it kicks in so fast. And then like a minute after the second one, I'm generally starting to disassociate at this point, like consistently throughout all my treatments. That's something that's been consistent. And I just kind of wait in the chair, like anticipating that last dose 5 minutes later, so that I could go all the way to recline all the way back and just stare up at the sky and be undisturbed. Or not the sky, but the ceiling, but it's got the wavy galaxy lights on it. And yeah, I'm able to not have to be on call or working or bothered for, the next 40 minutes until they need to take my blood pressure for the first time. And then they come in again at the end of the treatment, hour and 20 minutes later, something like that. But yeah, here we go. As the second dose is really kicking in at that point, my mind is bouncing all over the place, and I had this stressful morning with my family, and like a reminder or new information to you. My mom has ALS. I moved home. I helped take care of her. There's a lot of really high emotions, and shit's really shitty. So, yeah, and that was a blow to me with like all the emotions we had that morning. And I'm sitting there waiting for them to just come in, give me the third dose, and let me to be able to just like relax. And then I'm freaking out because it seems like it's been a long time since the last dose, but I also can't think as well right now. Like, obviously, my mind is cloudy. So I get up all kind of like drunkenly coordinated and wobbled out of the office to be like, hey, can we get the third dose? And it doesn't mean just because you're under the influence of esketamine or whatever that all your anxiety is null and void. So even though I'm like disassociating, I'm starting to get anxious now about what happens if it's late. And my day has been so stressful, and this is just one more thing that like I'm burnt out, and it just like hit me so hard. And that's when time and space made their exit. Now, I've cried during Spravato before, and this time I cried right now, and it hits like a ton of bricks when that happens. And that can actually be a little bit like relieving in itself after it's over. But this was beyond what I had gone through prior. This is like what I imagine people say a K-hole is. But like the room shrank, everything was spinning in all directions at the same time, and I'm in the dark, and we have the lights on the ceiling and the floor, and I've got like just these blurry visuals and colors and a few glimpses of my feet, and it looks like I'm speeding through space, like just with all of these visuals at this point, and my feet aren't moving. I can't like get my feet to move. And I'm like completely disassociated more than I've ever been before. And I was like, they look really effing far away. And then I kind of had I remembered that I had this funny thought because the first time that I went in for Spravato, I looked at my hand and I was really disappointed that it didn't look like wavy or like big or small or anything, because that's what people tell you about like hallucinogens or whatever psychedelics. There you go. So like that's what people tell you about like the psychedelics thing, is that it's super like whoa trippy with your body. And I never had that, and I was like, oh bummer. So for the 2 seconds when I could have a thought, that was my thought. But yeah, I remembered that I still have the visual of like the colors and everything from that image of my mind. But like at this time too, closing my eyes, I wasn't sure if I was gonna throw up, so I kind of sat there staring out. Occasionally, I'd like ground myself and look at my phone, the screen light, and then I'd look away, forgetting that I shouldn't do that. And this lasted for about 20 minutes until I evened out. I got my blood pressure taken. And then I decided after that I was going to nap the rest of it, because at this point I could close my eyes, but there were like little dots all like dancing together to make visuals, but that kind of faded. And the most important thing was that I was not nauseous anymore when I closed my eyes. Spravato is really sedating, so it wasn't like a hard task to get myself to conk out. It was just like, as an entire experience and day, a lot. And I don't think it would have been so devastatingly insane if I had experienced it that devastatingly insane before. But it was like out of my comfort zone, which then peaked like anxiety that like it wasn't even coming from thoughts. It was just like sheer chemical adrenaline at that time. But yeah, it's kind of scary too. But on that note, I'll see you guys in about a week. Thank you for making it to the end of the video with me. Until then, hang in there. I'm gonna try desperately to do the same. This is Sim, signing off.